Another day, another tier list. Today we're talking all of the DCEU movies. Let's do it. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. I have an excuse to update my DCEU tier list. I've done a couple over the last year, but you know what? Thoughts continue to change about movies, and today we're going to talk about all of the movies that are loosely a part of that universe, and I need you guys in the comments down below. What is your favorite and least favorite DCEU movie? As always, it's an opinion, yada yada, you've heard it before. And I'm going to place them on the tiers in terms of quality, not which characters are the strongest. Although that would be fun. And if you guys enjoy this tier list and you want to see a DCEU villains tier list, be sure to drop your thumbs up down below. That tells me you want to see more, but let's get right into it, guys. We're going to start out, try to fly through them, but you guys know I like to talk. Let's talk about Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation Proclamation. Now, Birds of Prey has a lot going for it, introducing new characters into the DCEU, going the more R-rated violent route as opposed to the movies that we had seen prior in this universe, and I like what they did. I think there are a lot of elements taken from the comics that work really well towards Harley Quinn's character. Obviously, a different-esque version of what Deadpool brought us, and this team, the formation of that team, it all worked extremely well. The one thing about this movie, and obviously Ewan McGregor's bad guy, which was incredible, Black Mask. The one thing about this movie, though, is it didn't really stick with me like I wanted it to. I walked out of it, enjoyed it, but I didn't really think about it a lot after. And then when I went back to rewatch it, I liked it. But again, there's just something about the story, the way that it's weaved together, and the overall plot that hasn't quite hit me the same way since that first time. So all of those things factored in, I'm still going to put this on the okay tier because I believe there is a lot in here that will resonate with a lot of people, but for me, just didn't quite leave that impact. Hello, Jason Momoa. Hello, Aquaman. Listen, James Wan's movie is wild. It's unlike any other movie in the DC universe. They're combining so many things that we've never seen before, mixed with things that we have seen before, to create this extremely unique experience where an octopus plays the drums. It's pretty cool. You know what else is cool? The action in this film. While a bit over the top and extremely sci-fi, and I will admit there are extremely cheesy moments in this movie that will take many, many people out of it, and I understand why, right? But there's something about this film that hits me in such a way. And look, I had friends that walked out of the theater because they hated this movie so much. But I'm sitting here watching it going, this is crazy, this is wacky, but Jason Momoa is owning this role. Patrick Wilson is a really good villain. I like all of the comic book accurate things that they included. And James Wan, his style, while different, worked really well for me. So I'm not going to sit back and say, what's the most well-constructed movie I've ever seen? But there's something about Aquaman that makes me want to put it on the good tier. I just have a really good time with this movie, and that's what going to the movies is all about. Speaking of fun, we have to talk about Shazam and just how much joy that movie evokes. A very different kind of story. You have this coming-of-age vibe mixed with just the best performance. I mean, he is so good as Shazam in this film. Well, really both actors, both the younger and older version, but Zachary Levi, he kind of takes this character and runs with it in a way that doesn't just carry the movie on his shoulders, but he is creating a franchise that I'm even more pumped for now that we're going into the sequel. We can get a little bit darker because these kids are getting older, but in terms of what this film gave us, an interesting villain. I won't say the most interesting that we've seen in the DCEU, but it provided a nice antagonist to our heroes, and seeing the family come together at the end. There were some things about the plot that I could pick apart, so it's not a film that, you know, maybe everyone's going to hold in high regard comparing to the other DCEU movies, but man, what is going to the movies all about? Again, it's about having fun, and I had fun with Shazam. It is on the high end of the good tier, but the good tier nonetheless. Oh man, speaking of movies that I just hold in the highest of regard, Man of Steel has always been that movie. And I get online and I go look at the Letterboxd score and all of these things, and I get so sad knowing that other people don't appreciate this film on the level that I do. Is that okay? Absolutely. Opinions are going to differ. But I go back to this film, and maybe the first time I wasn't all there. I was like, oh, I like this movie. But now, when I go back and I continue to see more things that I love and just this modern interpretation of Superman, I have to put Man of Steel on the great tier. It's a great film, a great interpretation of this character. Why does it stand out for me? Well, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It is more of him turning into Superman, the process of which he becomes the character that we all know and love, but we get to see the adversity that he has to go through in all of the movies that he's been in, but this is the first time that he's having to deal with love and loss and all of these really dark things, and yes, it is a film with certain things that do not work in its entirety, but I do love the fact that they go for it with the action, and even though the third act, it's full of destruction and dubstep, I still thoroughly enjoy that third act. It is so much fun, not for the people that all die, but again, he's doing his very best he can to save everyone, to be the Superman that we know him now to be, and this was all the start of that. So I thought Snyder's direction worked really well for this film. It's a movie that continues to hold up and get better over time, and I really love Man of Steel. And next up, Batman v Superman. V stands for Versus, if you guys didn't know. This was the film, I mean, maybe the most anticipated, the most hyped I've been for a movie ever. I mean, even competing with, like, the Avengers Endgame level hype. It's just two of my favorite comic book characters. I've always been a DC guy in the comics, so I see this, I'm going into this expecting the Dark Knight Returns level greatness. And I didn't get that. I was very disappointed with this film. Now, do I dislike it on the level that others dislike it? Not necessarily. And I think part of that maybe coming around on this movie came from when I watched the Ultimate Edition. Even though the Ultimate Edition still holds the problems from the film that, you know, really irk me, such as Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, certain story points, moments that come across as maybe a bit too much, too on the nose, yes, they're still there. But it also adds in a storyline for Superman, and it gives us more for him that adds to the buildup, therefore means more when they actually battle each other at the end. Certain scenes that I would argue are integral for the plot itself. Yes, the movie's longer. Who cares? It's a film that I believe needed all of these different scenes. Heck, I mean, they could have split up Batman v Superman Part 1 and Part 2. Just give me these moments that mean a lot to the plot. So I'm at a bit of a crossroads when it comes to this film, because while I think the original version is disappointing, still okay, right? There's just a lot to like in that movie, even with its problems. I'm actually going to add in my own little piece of this template here, so it wasn't on the template that I used, and put on the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman. We're going to add that to the good tier, because I just think there's enough there that gets that movie to good. I wish Letterboxd had a distinction. It messes up all my lists. What does everyone think of when they think of Wonder Woman, other than this? We're talking about movies, not music. I think of the first film, because the first movie, in my opinion, is a great film, barring the third act that I believe, well, not the entire third act, but the villainous presence in the third act that holds it back from being what I believe top-tier DC. And I'm talking in competition with the Dark Knights of the world and the Jokers of the world. Other than that, in the first two acts, it is a great build-up, a beautiful fish-out-of-water story that captures this dark side of Wonder Woman. See, Wonder Woman is two very distinct characters in the comic books. One version is this bright, uplifting, Christopher Reeve-esque version that we see in the second film, and the other version is darker and grittier and fits more in line with what we've seen from this DC universe, and that's what the first film brought us. And the first film is so good, so entertaining, so well directed. We could talk about the No Man's Land. We could talk about all of these sequences that stick in our brain, right? And again, a bit of a weak villain, but overall, I think the film works, and it's a great example of what Wonder Woman should be. Then we have Wonder Woman 1984, and I know so many people who hate this movie. And trust me, saw the review, hate the movie. But listen, I do believe this does capture that other version of Wonder Woman. Even though I have my issues with the plot, I have my issues with certain reveals and the misuse of Cheetah and how certain things were really disappointing. And I will admit, I have went a bit lower on this movie as time has progressed, but I will still slightly defend, sure, slightly, and throw it on the okay tier. I guess I find myself defending this DC universe even more than I expected because, look, it's a pretty good list. It's a good selection of films, and even though I wish the universe was more fluid, I wish they kind of knew what they were doing, there are a lot of movies in here that just strike a chord with me as a comic book fan, but also a fan of superheroes, and capturing or recapturing the magic that original Superman movie gave us, this uplifting spirit. I think that's what Wonder Woman 1984 attempts to do. Now, in turn, because of that, it comes across as a little bit cheesy. In certain moments, they don't quite work. And other moments, they feel a little bit awkward. But there's a lot in this film that I go back to, and I say, that was good. Chris Pine's presence, or the relationship, or what they try to do with Pedro Pascal, or certain moments in the middle portion of the film. The one moment where she's running away and she starts to fly, man, I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. So it has its moments. But again, a lot of people hate this film. So we're going to move on before I start getting tomatoes thrown at me. I got to edit in a tomato. You know what? I'm too lazy to do that. Well, now it's just awkward. Okay, it's the Josstice League. Hello, Josstice League. Goodbye, Josstice League. You go on the awful tier. And guess what? I wouldn't have even put it there, couple months ago, 3 months ago. I would have put it on the bad tier, but not the awful tier. But rewatching this movie right before watching the Snyder Cut is the most detrimental thing that's happened to a film since Cats premiered in the theater. Austin, what happened to Cats? Nothing. It just premiered, and it was terrible. This movie is also terrible. It ruins so much of the vision of Zack Snyder. And I wasn't even one, calling out for the Snyder Cut. I was interested, but I was like, okay, let's see what happens, right? Now that I've seen that movie and revisiting this in my brain, I will never revisit it on screen again because, again, I did that right before I watched the other film. It's so, when I hear people say they're the same film, I sit back and I start laughing. Because they're just not. They're just not the same film. Sure, the structure of the plot is the same, right? But there are so many elements and pieces of the puzzle and the way that it's edited together, it's all drastically different, and it creates a unique and entirely new experience that I believe warrants this second film, the Snyder Cut of the Justice League, or what we call the definitive Justice League in this house, daggone it, that warrants that movie going on the awesome tier. Zack Snyder's Justice League ages like a fine wine, and when I first watched it, I said, I don't know if I can put it above Man of Steel, because I love Man of Steel so much, and that's my movie that I defend, But now, Zack Snyder's Justice League has struck a chord with me that I didn't know was possible. If you're looking at what DC has done this year alone, it's pretty incredible, because we got Zack Snyder's Justice League and the Suicide Squad. Like I said, it's an entirely new experience. Steppenwolf, you actually care. Darkseid is actually in the movie. Cyborg is a character that I really didn't care about after the first Josstice League, but after this movie, I'm like, yeah, Cyborg's kind of the main character. It's kind of got me turning around on Ezra Miller's Flash, right? Gave him a little bit more to do here, some moments that were very interesting. I still need to see Flashpoint, but at least there's some excitement for Flashpoint now. Ben Affleck is, there's a reason for him to be turning away from kind of how he was in Batman v Superman. I had such an issue with the way he was portrayed in the other version, and it takes away the quirky, cheesy, silly stupidness that they tried to give us with the last version, and keeps a little bit of that humor, but it also adds in some dark elements that, again, I never knew was possible. I'm repeating myself now. I love this movie. It's great. You know what's not great? The first Suicide Squad. And whether it be the fault of the director or not, and clearly there was some studio interference, regardless, I have to put the movie that I saw on the bad tier because, it's just a bad movie. And for a long time, this was my least favorite in the DCEU for numerous reasons. And if you saw on Letterboxd, I went back and revisited this film with my wife last week, and she's actually, she's always been someone who has slightly defended this film, but even she was looking at me, and I was trying not to ruin it for her, because I don't like to be that guy, but she was looking at me going, yeah, this is kind of awkward. Or, why is this the 8th different song within the first 15 minutes of the movie? And there's no reason why this song's following up this song that has nothing to do with this song, from 80s to rap to hip-hop. It's just like the soundtrack is so off in this movie. But not only that, right? This weird style that this film has with the graphics and the neon colors and the lights and all these different things. I'm just like, okay, that would work with a movie attempting to capture a different tone, but the tone that this movie's going for, combined with the style, those two things clash so hard, and a movie that is full of great moments, and I mean great moments. The Harley Quinn stuff, really good. I liked Will Smith's version of Deadshot. Some things that are excellent when it comes to this movie, but those are individual scenes. When it's pieced together in this way, and then you get just the hula hooping villain. What was that? The wacky, waving, inflatable, arm-flailing tube man. What was that? And her brother, whom is one of the worst villains. What is this movie? What is this movie? I am not calling for an Ayer cut, but if we ever get one, it's got to be better than this, right? You know what is better than this? The new one. The Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad. Let's get this out of the way. We're going to put this on the awesome tier because DC, you nailed it. Guys, this movie is so much fun. It is so much fun. And you saw my review yesterday, so you know exactly how I feel. I'm not going to harp on it for too long, but James Gunn just injecting his style into this universe is just the best thing you could possibly imagine. And I haven't stopped thinking about some of the moments in this movie. I really haven't. It has stuck with me. I'm going to watch it again when it premieres tonight. I'm going to go back to a theater. I'm going to see it in IMAX this time. There's a lot when it comes to this film that just makes me so happy. And whether it be the characters or the moments or the hard R violence or just the simplicity of the plot, but the fact that they made it this emotional or interesting or fun. Come on, James Gunn. You've crushed it with this movie. I'm excited to see what you do with Peacemaker. Okay, we have reached the point in the video, as always, where we don't just have tiers, we have to rank the movies on those tiers. And the bottom two are fairly obvious. At the bottom is Josstice League. On the bad tier is Suicide Squad. Now things start to get a little bit more interesting. We have the okay tier, and I actually like the order that we see right there. We have Wonder Woman 1984, which has moved down a slot or two. The original version of Batman v Superman and Birds of Prey on the good tier. Since I, added this thing in here, it's going to look a little bit awkward, but we're going to do it. I'm going to put Aquaman at the bottom of this list and squeeze Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, right in between that and Shazam, which goes on the top of the good tier. On the great tier, we have Wonder Woman staying right there at the 4 spot, because number 3, Man of Steel, deserves its place in my top 3 now on the awesome tier. 2 movies that have kind of been turning around the DCEU, right? I'm going to put Zack Snyder's Josstice League in the 2 spot. Am I ready to say the Suicide Squad is my number 1 favorite movie? As of now, yes. That's why we keep doing these, because thoughts continue to change. But this is my tier list, folks. Again, agree, disagree, whatever it may be, please tell me why below. And if you enjoy this tier list and you want to see more in the DC universe, show your support by dropping that thumbs up. That tells me that you're enjoying the content that I'm bringing. But my goodness, guys, this was so much fun. I had the best time putting this list together, making sure it's concrete this time around. And when's the next DC movie? Is it the Batman? We have a long time to wait. Thoughts will keep changing. But I appreciate you guys so much for joining me. Are you excited for the next DC project? And are you going to see the Suicide Squad this weekend? All right, guys, you're truly the best. Stay tuned. Some special videos coming this week. I'm going on vacation, but I'm going to keep making videos and have some prepared for you guys while I'm gone. All right, I'll see you soon.